Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Very good evening to you all if you're from the UK and from Europe, or good afternoon if you're from the United States, and good night if you're from Asia and Pakistan and these different countries. I would like to welcome you to this webinar. We've been holding these webinars now on a weekly basis over the last couple of months, and today's webinar is on the challenges and opportunities for British Pakistanis in top UK universities, from Bradford to UCL, University College London. And we're delighted to have with us Professor Jawwad Darr, who will talk about his experience in some of the UK's top universities that he's been involved with, and not just top in the UK, but globally as well. And before I pass on to Professor Jawwad, I would just like to give a bit of an introduction to Jawwad. Jawwad was born in 1970. I'm 3 years younger than him, in Bradford. And his late father was a bus driver, and his mother ran a ready-made clothes shop where Jawwad and his siblings lived. He went to a normal comprehensive school, and subsequently he went on to study the BSc in chemistry at the University of Manchester, where he obtained a 2:1. He then went on to do a PhD at Imperial College, and subsequently 1-year postdoc at Imperial College on inorganic materials. And after spending 3 years at Nottingham University as a postdoc, he joined Queen Mary University in 1999 as an experimental officer, and was subsequently awarded the EPSRC, the prestigious EPSRC Advanced Research Fellowship, to carry out his own independent research. In 2007, he landed his dream job at the University College London in the chemistry department, and he has been there ever since. And is currently the Vice Dean of Enterprise in the Mathematical and Physical Sciences faculty, and has been a visiting professor in Pakistan at the Comsats University in Lahore since 2008. And his most recent achievement has been in the co-founding and current chairmanship of the UPSIGN charity, the UK Pakistan Science and Innovation Global Network, which seeks to support cooperation and coordination between the Pakistan and UK in research across multiple sectors, and also to support British Pakistanis in their career aspiration. In his academic achievements, he has published over 170 peer-reviewed papers, and has been involved in funding in excess of £20 million, British pound. His current research is focused around the development of new battery materials. So without further ado, I would like to pass on to Professor Jawwad Darr, who will speak for approximately 30 minutes. And then, because this is an interactive webinar, there'll be opportunity for questions, and Professor Darr will answer. And I'm sure Professor Darr, before he begins his talk, he will give some insight into how the Q&A will be conducted. So over to you, Professor Darr.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for all of you for giving up an hour today. I hope it's going to be worth it for you. I've definitely prepared for this. So look, there's several boxes here. So let's familiarize ourselves with the boxes. There's a chat box, which is for chatting. If you really want to say something desperate, say it. And there's a Q&A box. The Q&A box, what I'd like you to do is to put any questions as we're going along. You can do them as you like. But in this box that says Q&A, just type in any questions that you have, or certainly by the end, type in the questions if you could. What we'll do is you can also vote for those questions if you want. If you like a question and you want to vote for it, then it'll come to the top. My good friend Shahid Latif will be comparing the Q&A bit. As we go along, I'd like to get your opinion, right? This is supposed to be interactive. So there's many here students. There's I see a few professors here, or academics, who've probably had similar experiences to me. I really love you to give us your input and insights, you know, so that I really value that. So what you need to do, if you want to do that, if you go to the chat function at the moment, I've written down this. You need to go to menti.com. I'm going to ask like 3 or 4 questions. menti.com, and you use the code, and I've put it in the chat box, which is 9735214. You could do that now if you like. If you've got a big enough screen, you can have this open, And in a couple of slides time, we're gonna start it. So if you can do that now, go to menti.com. I don't know in the chat box, if you've done it, just give us a thumbs up or something, or if you like, it's absolutely fine. So can you see the screen that says the title and there's a picture of Bradford there? Can you see that, Nasser? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, bro. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Nasser Ali and Young Professionals organization for the society for inviting me to do this, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'd like you to go to menti.com and please use the code now. The first question I have for all of you today is this question. How are you feeling today? So the code is 9735214. It's on the above chat. So look, my journey, as I said, started off in Manchester as an undergraduate student. To be honest, I had no knowledge of the university system, nobody to tell me what the university system was. And I've sort of muddled my way, and it took me 18 years. I added it up. It took me 18 years before I got to UCL, which was kind of like the dream job. And along the way, I had some really horrendous experiences and some good ones as well. I'm not going to tell you my life story, but I'll tell you a few little bits of things that I think are worth knowing. Now, I know some of you are students, and I also hope that I'll give you some insights into what it's like being a student in a top university. I'm also very proud that during the last 12 years, I've been a visiting professor at ComSats, and that's been some of the most amazing, rewarding work, working with brilliant students. So what this talk is about is the following. I've had messages from people telling me I should be talking about lots of other things. Well, I only want to talk for 30 minutes. And because I want to hear what you guys and what your experiences are, what your questions are. So I want to talk about British Pakistanis. I want to give you a bit of background. Then I'm going to talk about my observations in school and also at university as a member of staff. And then I want to offer some advice in part 3 for students and for staff. If you come from a British Pakistani or BAME background, I want to talk about, I'm going to try and end on a positive note. Okay. I don't want to just talk about all the negative stuff. There'll be a lot of negative stuff I'm going to say, but I'm just being honest. Okay, so you can see the slides okay, everybody? Yeah? So can you see them, Nasser?
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic, okay. So I'm actually going to give you today, I'm going to give you the conclusions before I actually give the talk, okay? The conclusions that I'm going to come to, but we get to the end of the story. The conclusions are that British Pakistanis need to work harder to define the narrative. We are portrayed in a certain way, and we need to work harder to change that narrative. That's really important. And this comes from leadership and role models. And we are very lucky and very enriched in our cultural heritage and all these other things that make us different and stand out. We've got a lot of enrichment, and that's a global perspective that a lot of our white counterparts don't have. But the truth is there is bias in the system, and we have to play the game, and we have to play it better. And you have to value yourselves as British Pakistanis. Sometimes we sell ourselves far too cheaply, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay, I'll explain what I mean. We have to get involved more in stepping up for things as well. Sometimes, I know in particular in our community, we're very good at giving money, giving zakat and all these things. But sometimes we actually need to roll our sleeves up and get involved more. And there's some brilliant examples of people who get involved, but I think we could do even better. Okay, and there's actually data on this. So it's not just me talking on a personal perspective. There's actually figures, facts and figures I can quote to you if you want. The good news is for you students who want to come to top universities like UCL, and I'm going to talk about UCL today because that's where I come from. And I can talk about Imperial as well because I've been there and I know what it's like. But what I can say is that partly from reasons like Black Lives Matter, the minorities are now seen as something that should be in a university, and there are more assertive, positive actions to get us into universities. It's definitely happening. I'm not saying it's going to solve the problems, but it is happening. What we need to do, though, the one abiding rule is sometimes when we work in the university, we really need to understand the system and work it as best we can with the capabilities and the bias that is against us. But we also need to then help to change it as well once we get into those positions of power. And I'm doing it, and lots of other people are doing it now, particularly from BAME backgrounds. I'm really encouraged. I'm going to share with you some data very quickly, okay, about British Pakistanis. Now, these are figures from 2015-16, right? But when you look at attainment, and there's always examples of brilliant schools and brilliant students. I mean, I look at in Bradford, in my hometown, there's some brilliant work that's gone on at places like Faversham Academy and others, where they've turned around schools and they've actually worked out why these schools were failing. And some of the things I'm going to touch upon in a minute. But the fact is, around circa 2015-16, British Pakistani boys in particular were really underachieving. So as an ethnic group, in terms of GCSE performance, you know, we weren't really pulling our weight. And I mean, I don't want to get into a big debate about our communities, but and that's a separate talk. But these are the facts. And this is the attainment gap, which you should have all heard of the attainment gap. And that basically says if you go in with similar A levels into a university, you will qualify on average with a slightly lower degree percentage. So 79% of white people getting 2-1s as their first degree. And this would compare with the same grades, Asian students. And of course, that will be made up of Indians as well as Pakistanis. So you can imagine the Indians will probably be doing better because they're doing better at earlier stages as well. On average. So you'll get only under 70, but 68%. And of course, that compares to black students who are getting about 55% of them are getting this 2-1, coming in with the same level of attainment. Why do we have this attainment gap? I can't answer that question necessarily fully, but I can say that universities are aware of it. They're becoming more active about it, and things are being done. When we look at employment, the figures are really startling. Okay, so this is looking at across all employment in the first column. It's looking at men, then it's looking at women. So I mean, these facts are obviously from a few years ago now. This is 2017. For example, one of the things that's notable, and again, I'm not passing comment or judgment on this at all. Far be it from me to pass judgment on this, but there's a fact that a lot less of women, in particular from our backgrounds, are in the workplace. Okay, and that's a fact. I mean, you compare this to white British women, 73%, Pakistani, and we've bunched Bangladeshis in here in this one, 38%. Okay, and again, I could give you a whole talk about this, but you know, the facts are in terms of employment. Again, we're doing worse than our white counterparts, our Indian counterparts. In fact, a lot of our Indian counterparts are in better paid jobs on average. And particularly Pakistani and Bangladeshis are in the lower skilled areas. And these are facts, okay? And these are not disputable. So I want to get your opinion on what you think white British people think about Pakistanis. And there was a survey done a few years ago now. These are circa 2013, but it hasn't changed that much. So look, I mean, we'll get a few more coming up. It's interesting that many of you perceive that white people would, and this is a very limited poll, okay? So I mean, you know, we can put caveats on these polls. So the question is, what do you think white people say about Pakistanis? And in particular, threatening, lean on the state and keep to their own. Well, it's not quite that, but that's quite an interesting response. In particular, though, you all identified that we keep to our own, okay? And I mean, this survey was this is 2013. This is it's gone off on my thing. It was I think it was YouGov poll. Okay, so it's only 2,000 people, so it's not a massive sample. But I think the key thing to look here, and this is comparing actually Pakistanis to African to Eastern European backgrounds. Okay, so we are seen as, out of those three ethnic backgrounds, we are seen as the most likely to keep on our own. Okay. Why am I talking about keeping on our own? Because I believe that this is part of the issues that some of the Pakistanis have in universities, or the perception maybe, perhaps. We are seen as reasonably hardworking, more hardworking than blacks, slightly less hardworking than Eastern Europeans. Actually, we're not seeing as threatening. I know in the intervening years, I mean, this was 2013, you may argue that because of Islamophobia, that has changed now. And I do agree. I mean, most of these things are probably not changed, but the thing about Islamophobia definitely, I think, is an issue, and it's definitely grown with social media. So we can look at why you guys suggested threatening was higher now than it would have been in, say, in 2013. So that's really interesting. Okay, I want to briefly share, because I want to talk to most of you and get your questions. I'm just going to look at the Q&A section. So we haven't had any questions in Q&A, so feel free to add them at any point in the Q&A. It's absolutely fine to add them now if you like. So I'm going to talk about my experiences at school, and I'm going to very briefly, and my experiences at university. Okay. And I think a lot of this is about having resilience. When people tell you you're not good enough, if you do not have personal resilience, and a lot of that is just your personality, your family, your maybe genetics, it could be a number of things. If you don't have personal resilience, it's virtually impossible to get anywhere in the system. I'm going to talk about my school days. I grew up in Bradford. The schools that I went to, most of the Pakistanis were from the villages. They didn't value education. There was a lot of racism, National Front in the 70s. We had low aspirations. Most of us didn't have really role models of educated people. We had an identity crisis. We weren't given cultural reference. Here's a picture here of one of these army troops of from the World War, I think it was from World War II, who actually is one of these villages in Pakistan where the whole, half the village of the men actually went to fight in World War II. I never knew anything about this until, I don't know, maybe about a few years ago, actually. So there's a lot of history about Muslim scientists or scholars or others that really doesn't get touched upon. In school, you're not told about this stuff. There's no positive narrative created about Pakistanis or our achievements or Muslims even in society. I know a lot of this has changed now. I'm talking about my day, okay? A lot of this, and basically we were told we weren't good enough. We weren't smart enough. We weren't good enough. I mean, I got told that I would get a job as a careers officer. That was what they predicted I would be, a careers officer. Okay, that's, I mean, so most of us, to be honest, I left school with a massive chip on my shoulder, with pretty reasonably low self-esteem and very confused as an individual. Now, I'm born in the UK. Many of the people on this call are born in Pakistan. And you have a different perspective to the Brit. To us British Pakistanis, many of us are confused. I made a decision when I was 18 that I was British, and that was very proud, and I still am, of my Pakistani heritage, and I celebrate that. Others are still confused, and I think Pakistanis born in Pakistan think very differently to me. So we all have different perspectives. So I don't know what your experiences were like. When I was a postdoc, the hardest thing, and there's stats on this now, that British Pakistanis really struggle to get up that career ladder from postdoc to lecturer. That's a big jump, especially for the BAME community and British Pakistanis as well. Now, I saw nepotism where there were people much less talented than me or my peers were getting in because the supervisor said, they'd work for a certain supervisor. I was told by a professor who I'm not going to name, he's very famous now, that I wasn't good enough and that I would never make it as an academic. He said that to me. And to be honest, every time somebody's told me I can't do something or that I'm not good enough, it's motivated me 10 times more than I would have been before they'd said it. So he did me a favor, a massive favor. Now, a lot of people will say it's not good to go around with massive chip on your shoulder, but sometimes that is the driving force. And I'm not apologetic about that. There's stats to show many postdocs or staff members are maintained on, especially from BAME backgrounds, tend to be more maintained on sort of short-term temporary contracts. There's stats to show this. And I think that I've heard a lot of testimony from people who have been doing this. At lecturer level, I found the same thing. The point is, nepotism will get you so far, it'll get your foot in the door, but it doesn't guarantee you success. And I'm sure there's people here who've seen colleagues from other backgrounds, white backgrounds or otherwise, where they're not talented as some of the other people there, but they're handpicked because they can talk in the right way and behave in the right way. And unfortunately, that is what happens sometimes in universities. And I see it happen a lot. At lecturer level, there is essentially, I believe, some aspects of a closed society where if you're not accepted, you are excluded from certain things. Some of our community don't help themselves. I've got examples of people who come from India and from Pakistan. What they've done is they've worked under a white professor. And unfortunately, what's then happened is this professor has essentially exploited them, got them to do loads of stuff, write grants, bring in loads of funding, and never promoted them. And the reason they don't get promoted is because that professor benefits, or that individual boss benefits from them never going up the ladder, because they want to keep them where they are so they can keep working. I've seen this happen even at the top universities. It's really sad to say, but that is what happens. And so because I'm born in this country, I don't have those colonial issues, right? I think like a Brit. in some ways. But I've seen some of my colleagues, particularly who've come from the Asian subcontinent, some of them, not all of them, some of them have got caught in that trap of being grateful and not getting what they deserve. And it's absolute scandal. It really is. And it happens. One professor once said to me, he was my mentor, actually. I'm not going to name this person. About 10 years ago, when I was at UCL, he said to me, why are you going to Pakistan? Why do you go there? So fast forward 10 years now nobody asks that question because we all think about global research. But the mindset was different then, and it's changed a lot. Thank you for your comments. Let's have some questions. If you want to keep adding questions, please keep voting for the questions. Okay, it's over to you guys on Mentimeter now. Please go to menti.com. Why are British, Pakistani, UK academics not rising to the top? Tell me about your opinions, please. Please vote now. Okay, so I think it's really interesting. What we're seeing in the numbers, you can all see yourselves here. The two big ones are nepotism, unconscious bias, and to some extent, mentors and imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a really interesting one. And I'll tell you something, at the top universities, you do feel like an imposter sometimes because there are some super smart people there. But being smart isn't the only reason you're an academic. There's lots of other qualities that we want in our academics. Right, okay, I'm going to move on. Thank you for voting. It's good to get your comments. And 1.4 person doesn't agree with the question, and that's okay as well. Thank you. So look, I'm just going to be really honest with you about my approach to this, because I think if I just lie and pretend I'm something I'm not, I'm just going to be really honest with you. I'm giving you advice for students and for staff, okay? Some of you will say to me, oh, you're a sellout. Why are you like this? You shouldn't be like this. I'm very comfortable with how I am. The chameleon is something that I feel a lot of affinity for. The reason is because I'm born in this country and I work in Pakistan. I've always traveled to Pakistan. I feel like I'm a mixture of people anyway. I have different identities, multiple identities, and so do many of you. And you have to be a chameleon. When you're in the workplace, you're different. When you're at home, you're different. When you're in Pakistan, you're somebody else. It's not that you've changed your personality or anything, but you have to understand the environment you're in. And in particularly in the UK, you have to think about how others will perceive you. And it's really about perception, a lot of it. It really is. Top universities, they're very different, okay? I've been to Imperial, I've been to Manchester. There are some that are really friendly and some that are not. And you can generally Google which ones are good and which ones not. UCL is fantastic. I cannot say a bad word about UCL. Honestly, I wish I could, but I can't. There's some amazing initiatives. And it's always been a very multi-ethnic, diverse university, but it does have a few faults, and we'll talk about them. Okay. In particular, we've been chasing overseas students, high fee payers, generally very wealthy. Okay. Particularly, we haven't focused on minorities, and those that come to UCL or to top unis are usually from affluent backgrounds, went to public schools, had the best education. Let's be honest. A lot of the people we hire as postgrads, let's say staff members, I mean, are usually ex-members of people's groups. So there is a bit of that. There is favoritism, or we hire people from the best universities. So there tends to be a thing where if you've been to the best universities, you'll get hired into the best universities. So there is a bit of that goes on. Is that because they're just the best people? I'm not sure. I would say not in all cases. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and it's usually nepotism or some other factor, some other variable. But I have seen that happen particularly, and maybe I got into UCL because I'd been to Imperial. That's quite possible. In the past, the top universities weren't really interested in minorities. I don't care what anyone says, they were not interested. However, Black Lives Matter has changed the game very, very recently. I'm telling you now because some of you students want to come to UCL or other universities. At UCL, and I can't speak for Imperial or other places necessarily, in the undergrad, I mean, I was in a meeting last week and we started to talk about actually encouraging people from Bradford and Manchester and Birmingham come to UCL chemistry. I was so excited. It's the first time in my career, which spans back to, let's say 2000, where I was actually talking about we want to recruit students from some of these areas. If they're good enough, we want to encourage them to come to UCL. That's never happened before. Mega excited about that. And I think that is beginning to happen. People are thinking about, well, we really need a bit of diversity. Is it about hitting targets? We can argue that. But we are also talking about hiring. In the last 5 years, we've been focused around hiring women to get more of gender equality. But actually, we've only been talking about hiring white women largely. Hiring Asian or Black or BAME women has not seen much of it, to be frank. I'm not saying it isn't happening, but it's generally been white women. But now people are beginning to think about, and we are actually monitoring the number of BAME staff in our departments now. I go to faculty meetings now as Vice Dean Enterprise, and we talk about how each department is doing. So we're setting the agenda really, really clearly. So my tip for you students, don't be scared to apply to the best universities. Please don't feel like an imposter. If you've got the grades and you're good enough, you should be applying, because now is the best time ever to apply. Do carefully think about the university, think about the environment, and look into what students say about the university. I mean, I didn't have a great experience in Imperial as a student, but I did find it an amazing place academically to work in. But I'd say UCL is much, much friendlier, in my opinion, for its students, and it really looks after them. Make sure you do things now that will stand you out to get you noticed in terms of your CV. And even think about ring up the university if you're going for a job or going for a student, ring them up, find out, talk to the tutors, the undergraduate tutor, show interest, and let them know, about what you've done. And if you do get in, try and be active to improve, whether the sort of groups you're involved in, try and do stuff to show off your culture to others, because I think when we share our cultural values, that's when it's really powerful. So, I really encourage you. And if you ever come to UCL, please feel free to contact me and my colleagues at Upsign. Now, a tip for academics is a bit different. There's a game. It's a big game. For me, it's just a game, okay? You have to study the promotion criteria. What gets you promoted in a university? I mean, promotion is not everything, okay? There are lots of enriching things in our life. But when we talk specifically about doing well in universities and getting ahead, many of our colleagues don't actually look at the promotion criteria, because when you play the system by looking at the promotion criteria, that is what you're going to be judged by. So if you ignore it and just do what you want and don't think about it, you're not playing the game. Because if you use the system, you can ask for what you deserve. Don't be afraid to ask for a promotion if you deserve it. And don't sell yourself cheaply. And don't get involved in these things where you're getting no reward for it. And this is what's been happening to many of my colleagues. We talk about white allies. Allies are allies, whether they're brown, white, pink, I don't care. If you can get allies, get an ally. Somebody who's going to stick up for you and help you get your promotion or whatever targets you have to achieve, that's for you. And if you have to be a certain way on a certain day in a certain crowd, try to be adaptable. I'm not asking you to compromise your values or anything like that. Absolutely not. But just understand, there's ways, and people perceive you in a certain way. And I know that some people would never change anything about themselves. They want to be the way they are, and that's up to them. If they want to do that, I can't argue with it. But in terms of the collaborators, try and find people who are going to make you better as well. Don't stick to people because they happen to be Asian or whatever. Just go for the best people. And try and maybe, one of the mentalities I've noticed amongst some of my colleagues from Asian backgrounds is they try and do a lot rather than looking at the quality. If you want to get into a top university, the best thing is focus on quality. Do less things, but do them better. And that's a really key lesson that I've learned at the top universities. And if you get into a senior position, do your best to change the narrative. Okay, if you've got that confidence, not everybody in the early careers is afraid. I wouldn't have done it 5 years ago. I was afraid because, to be honest, I come from a working class background. My aim was to get promoted so I could be in a position that I could bring about change. And I'm willing to do that. And I'll do that for the rest of my life now. So I've talked a lot about negative things. It is a tough profession, but it's also a nurturing profession. You are teaching people, you are training people, you are giving them life skills. I love that. There's a lot of freedom to travel, freedom to set your own agenda. the best thing for me as a British Pakistani and for other British Pakistanis is the fact that we can work internationally. Global research and is really important now. We bring a completely different perspective as bridge builders. You know, our universities are beginning to recognize the diversity and the importance of it. And you know, the great thing is that if you're working across countries internationally, you can actually make change in the world. And that's actually quite tough if you just stick to UK-based research. You know, many of our colleagues are afraid to travel abroad. The bottom line is being an academic is a wonderful career choice. It's very, very hard. It's the toughest job I know. And your wife and kids won't thank you for working stupid hours. But the best thing about being a British Pakistani in the UK system is that you bring something new to the table. You have the ability to build bridges with other countries in Asia and Pakistan in particular. And generally, most of us are well-traveled, and we can offer some really world-changing, life-changing experiences for many, many people overseas as well. And we can also do brilliant research here, but we've got those options. And many of our white colleagues don't have those options. So we're very lucky. I just want to talk about giving back. I've been involved in UpScience since we set up about 3 years ago. It's been the best thing that I've ever done in academia. My colleagues are absolutely brilliant. I've made so many great friends. I'm so lucky. This year, we were lucky enough to go and do these amazing workshops. We had white allies, we had brown allies. One of the things I'm really keen is changing people's hearts and minds about British Pakistanis and Pakistan. One of the ways we did that was to take 70 odd academics out there and introduce them to 70 to 75 other Pakistani academics. And you know, the mindset of those people changed, and many of them have come back feeling very, very different about Pakistanis and Pakistani research. And that's been a great achievement. And I really thank all of those people who've joined our core group and are very active. And it's been a really great experience. I'm giving you the conclusions again, because I gave you them earlier. You know, we must value ourselves better, and let's actually volunteer and step up and actually start to make a contribution. Would you like to take over for the last session?
Yeah, Jawwad, thank you very much. That's really, really a meaningful, focused narrative and a fantastic journey, you know, from someone who, in your words, Jawwad, from a humble background, grown up in the backyards of Bradford, and made it all the way to the lights of London. And you know, first of all, just want to say a fantastic journey that you've done, and we're all proud of you. And you know, we need more people like yourself to be able to be out there. And when I was looking at the conclusions, I was just thinking that you know, it's how we basically look at utilizing people like yourself to be a stepladder, or if you like, as they say, there are two kind of people. There's that person who shows you the door as to that's the direction you want to go in, and then there are those people who keep the door open for you. So knowing Jawwad, he's the latter. You know, I've known Jawwad for, as he knows, for over 2 years now, but it sounds like I've known him for a long time. So he's a good friend and like a brother to me. So thank you, Jawwad. That's for all that you've done and you're doing. I think it's a fantastic presentation today. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go to the questions. There seems to be a few questions here, so I'll try to unpick some of these in the Q&A session, which have been. So the first one is from Majid Khan. He says, do you reckon academic opportunities will decrease or increase for BAME males, with the emphasis of schemes such as the Athena Award being undertaken by many unis nowadays?
Okay, so Athena was set up in 2005, I think. It could be 5 or 15. I think it's 2005. It was set up mainly for women. A lot of it was related to women and improving the plight for women. That's my understanding. The emphasis at universities has now changed to think about minorities. What will happen is, as a result of that, unless they do some intervention, it will be BAME males or black Asian males will be next. And then the last one that will get considered is BAME females, right? Because they're always in the worst situation. Sorry about that, Parveen, but and a few others who are there. So hopefully they won't do that mistake, and they will look at BAME as a cohort. You know, I know some places right now that are actually desperately trying to hire BAME females, partly as a tick box. It's really horrible to say that, but I know some Indian female academics who are being headhunted by every university in the country virtually because they're talented, but actually just because there's a lot of this going on. And I'll give you an example. When Black Lives Matter came out, my university, one of the stupid things they did was to put out a web release about Black Lives Matter. And it basically said, we're going to do lots of things for Black people. And I thought, hang on, why are you knee-jerk reacting? Whilst I agree with Black Lives Matter, you've forgotten all the other minorities who are equally struggling. And I thought sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is a real problem. So I hope that BAME, I don't think BAME males will do any worse. I think I would worry about BAME females in the answer to that question. Okay, Shahid, over to you.
Thank you, Jawwad, very comprehensively done. Okay, so the next question comes from anonymous attendee. Your advice for females from ethnic background who did very well back home academically but got lost arriving in the UK.
Oh, there she is. Madhya, do you fancy answering this one? I'm allowing you to talk, Madhya.
Yes, please. I'm here and I've been listening very, very interestingly to what you have been saying, Jawwad, and I completely agree that women from a BAME background, they are right at the very end of the ladder. You're absolutely right in pointing that out. I mean, it's almost like a double disability.
Yeah.
Being a woman and then being a BAME woman, that puts us at the very bottom of the ladder. And in order to prove, for example, I'll talk about myself, for example, to prove my ability, my skills, I have to work twice as hard as my counterparts. And I think, could you please rephrase the question, Shahid?
Yes, certainly. It says, your advice for females from ethnic backgrounds who did very well back home academically, but got lost arriving in UK.
I'll try to be very, very brief here. I've got 3 things I want to share. The first one is, don't be afraid to shout out about your successes and your achievements. I think we do, probably we shy away from that, call it modesty, call it humility, whatever, but we do not shout enough about the good stuff we do. So talk to your colleagues, talk to the people up in the ladder, newsletters, whatever it is, shout about your successes, no matter how small they are. Pay attention to your online profiles, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. Secondly, definitely get a role model or a mentor who will be there to guide you, and more so, maybe somebody who would sponsor you, who would open up opportunities for you. That's different to a mentor, and I think that's a really, really important one. And finally, I think don't be afraid to apply for positions. Don't shy away only because you meet 75% of the criteria. That's really common. I have seen women, not only ethnic minority women, generally women shy away from applying for positions only because they do not meet 100% of the essential criteria. And as compared to a man, if they feel they are up to 50, 60%, they'll go ahead and they'll have it a go. So believe in yourself and, keep going. And definitely you have to sort of carve out your own way. And I don't want to steal any more time. I'll hand back to Jawwad and Shahid.
That is the best answer anybody could have given. Thank you so much, Madhya. It's a real pleasure to work with you, and I thank you for that answer.
Thanks, Jawwad.
Okay, Shahid?
Thank you, Madhya. I would agree. I would second Jawwad. That's very comprehensive. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next question we have is another anonymous. Your advice for female, no, that's short. There's another one that's come from anonymous attendee. It says, should preferential treatment be highlighted and acknowledged, or just accepted as being unfortunate?
As I said, in the last 5 years, the agenda has been, let's get more women, and that's fine. So when women applied, sometimes they weren't better than some of the men. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have hired them. I'm just saying, in my opinion, some of the guys were better. So, I asked the same question of BAME. Should we be having favoritism? Should we try and get more BAME? If we want more BAME people, should we somehow have a system where we are, the most we're going to do is really encourage BAME people. Will it change the number of BAME staff? I don't know, but it's becoming a real target for the university to improve the ratio of staff, so it's more reflective of the country or just a society. I just don't think we can really do much about it, though. It's really hard to prove, is the answer. It's probably the short answer. It's hard to prove.
Thank you, Jawwad. So obviously you're referring to whether we should be looking at positive discrimination. It's still called discrimination. Thank you, Jawwad. Thank you for that honest and candid answer. Right. So the next question is from, where are we at the moment? Let's have a look. Okay, so another anonymous attendee is saying, if you are experiencing evident discrimination during an interview, should you call it out? Should you call out the person, or is this not a good idea?
And I think sometimes when you're in the middle of an interview, if they're going to discriminate or you know, be overtly discriminatory, usually it's going to be subtle, and it's quite hard to call out, because one of the issues we have, unfortunately, is sometimes we are misreading something that isn't racist, because we're so used to, or our past has scarred us, that sometimes we misinterpret the meaning of things. So I wouldn't do it in an interview, no. Yes, brother, can you just tell us, very briefly introduce yourself and then maybe give us a few words?
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak here. Well, I mean, as you said, I was born in Pakistan and more or less raised in Pakistan. I was 20 when I first went to UK, and I studied there. And I did my PhD in chemical engineering. I've been employed at more or less all the West Midlands universities, including Aston, Birmingham, and most recently Keele University. So I've been doing more kind of PDRA kind of work, and still trying my luck on the lecturing role so far.
Would you say you've experienced particularly any, I mean, do you feel there's a bias because you're from Pakistan?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think I will definitely share some of the stories which you brought up. And I mean, this is quite common in my career, which I've seen. But I mean, I know myself, I'm very hardworking. I can do the work which I have to do. But as you said, I may have a different perspective to do things. And that could be a barrier for my own kind of success, which I really need to, I mean, do the things the way people perceive these to be done. I don't think I have actually that kind of touch, which really puts me at the edge of, or let's say at the leading edge of the other academics.
So yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, you know, like I said, you know, we're always here to support people who are struggling with this. I mean, there's a story I could, you know, we could see hundreds and hundreds of people who, you know, many people we know who are basically suffering this kind of bias, and you know, it's so bad, but it is a fact of life, and it's really hard to know what to do about it. I think the best thing we can do is support each other, and you know, there's many really prominent academics on this call today who've got to these good positions. So it's a responsibility of people who've got to the top, and there's quite a few of us here, so that we've got to keep supporting our colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Should we close here? I mean, look, I think somebody asked about getting in contact. What I'd say is thank you, first of all, for all of you who stayed on. It's really amazing. I wasn't sure there'd be 5 people or 2 people today. My kids thought it was really funny that there might not be anybody. Thank you for that. And if I've never met you before, inshallah, one day we'll get a chance to meet. And I'd like to thank Shahid, I'd like to thank Nasser, I'd like to thank my team and the Upsign team. You know, please check out our website, upsign.com, www.upsign.com. What are we about? We're about supporting British Pakistanis, changing the hearts and minds of them. And inshallah, when COVID situation gets better, we'd love to meet with some of you. If you feel you've got time and you want to volunteer and get active, that would be great. I saw there was my friend Mawiya on the call earlier, and he's been very much involved in volunteering, and he's done some amazing things. So maybe at a later date, we'd like to introduce some of you to the idea of volunteering, because some of these volunteering jobs that he talks about are absolutely really, really important. And you'd be surprised, there's a complete lack of magistrates from the general public from BAME background. So there's great opportunities out there. So I hope some of you will encourage your kids and yourself to get involved in some of these things, because these are an important part of integration in society. So thanks for listening. And I hope some of you, oh, you are there. Thank you, brother. So Mawiya's there. Maybe I could, for those of you who've registered, maybe we'll send you Mawiya's details if you want to find out more about volunteering. because I think it's a really important topic. I'd just like to thank again everyone who helped. If you want to find more about Upsign, please drop Fazana a line. If you think you actually have got time to get involved, we have a very core team that we're very choosy about who joins our core team, because you have to give up time in your week to do something. But if you really are interested and committed, we'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay then. So thank you very much, Jawwad, for an excellent presentation, and it was an excellent, very interactive. A lot of, I think there was a lot of other questions we couldn't get through. We didn't have the time. So thank you very much for everyone for joining. This webinar was actually live streamed on YouTube as well. So you will see this recording on the Upsign YouTube channel, and also on the Young Professional Society YouTube channel as well. So please do forward that to others who are not able to join us today. So once again, thank you very much, and keep safe.